Welcome to the No Limit Selling Podcast, where industry leaders share their advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast. And today we have Scott Smith from, is it Denver?
It is Denver, yes sir.
Denver, Colorado. Superb. It's a beautiful part of the world. And are you a resident there, or were you born there, or did you end up migrating there?
No, I migrated here. So I was born in Phoenix, and then my father was an oil field. He worked on offshore rigs. And so as a young person, I lived in Alaska, Ecuador, Iran, Australia, Brunei. Yeah, we moved around a lot, and then joined the military out of high school in Houston, ended up in Vicenza, Italy for 2 years. And then ended up at Fort Bragg, and then through a series of events ended up in Denver. Met my ex-wife here, and have been here ever since.
You know, that just sounds so funny. I met my ex-wife. It just it fits, but it doesn't fit at the same time.
Yeah, it does.
So you're First U Realty, and so I guess that really says that you're really focused on your clients.
It does. That we are very client-centric. A lot of realtors like to work in specific spaces. They focus on neighborhoods or towns. I work the whole I-25 corridor. If somebody looks for the need to help buy or sell a house and I meet them, I'm going to help them buy or sell that house wherever it is. I don't care if I go to the mountains. I don't care if I go to Colorado Springs or Fort Collins. It's really just about finding the client what they need and making sure that they have the most seamless experience they possibly could when they're buying or selling their house.
Superb. And Scott, is it just you, or do you have a team?
No, I have a team. I have about 13 agents that work with me.
So what made you decide to go from individual producer, I'm sure with some admin help, to becoming a team leader, and how soon did you regret it?
So it's kind of an interesting story. I worked for a brokerage called Colorado Home Finder. Colorado Home Finder was really well known in the city for a couple of decades. And Brandon decided that he wanted to franchise. And so Colorado Home Finder in Kansas or in Arkansas doesn't make any sense. So he made the transition to U First Realty. And I was one of his top agents. As soon as I knew I had the opportunity, I wanted to buy a franchise. So I bought the first franchise and honestly never regretted it. I mean, it was the investment that I made in the franchise. I've made that money back in the first 6 months.
Oh, love it.
The higher split, because I went from making 70% on my personal business to 95%. So that money, that $25,000 came back to me relatively quickly. And I love mentoring agents. I love helping people grow. I've been in sales leadership for 30 years. So it's just something that was a kind of a natural fit for me.
So Scott, you probably get all kinds of people becoming realtors. A certain class of people would be salespeople that were in a different profession, quite successful, coming into this business. Have you met one of those? And what's that transition like having those sales skills and coming into this industry?
Well, I mean, I've met one of those and I am one of those. So in 2017, I'd been a mortgage broker in a previous life back in the early 2000s, but mainly most of my career has been in corporate sales. I worked for MCI. I worked for a company called Agility Recovery. We sold business continuity. So the majority of my career I spent in corporate sales. What I found in the transition to being a realtor is that there are sales made in the realtor process, but being a real estate agent is not really sales. I've never taken somebody into a house and had to sell them a house. You walk somebody through a house and they love the house or they don't love the house, and you're going to walk them through houses until they find one that they love. We make a sale very early on in the process to get them to use us as their realtor. But once that sale is made, it's much more on the service end than it is in the sales side. So it's an interesting transition. Now, look, we use negotiation skills, which are, heavily laden with sales. when we're talking with other realtors
Right.
and building relationships. But I feel like a lot of people perceive this job to be used car sales, and it's much more customer service. It's much more client oriented, getting people comfortable with being in uncomfortable situations. For a lot of people, for the first time, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a purchase. And the most they've ever spent on a purchase before that is $10, $20, $30,000 on a car. And
Right.
you are walking somebody into something that they have never been in before. And you got to get them to a place where they feel good about that decision, even though they may feel very nervous about that decision.
I was talking to this realtor, and he was recollecting this early on in his career. The clients were going to buy a particular house, and he kind of cajoled them a little bit to buy a better house. And at the closing, the wife came over to him and said, "Hey, John, we were looking to buy the cheaper house, and thank you so much for helping us buy the better house. This is a better decision for us." So I think it kind of leads to the underlying foundation, if it's done right, is trust between the person buying the house and the realtor. The stronger that trust is, the faster you can find them a place. And also, real estate, you don't even need a real estate agent unless there's a problem. And that's when it's like absolute, the trust in the realtor, guiding them through that process and keeping them calm is essential. So how do you coach your charges, the agents that you have, to really build that trust and maintain that trust?
Sure. So trust is set in a couple of ways. The first thing the first way that you build trust is through authenticity, right? So always be yourself. If people don't get the sense that you're your authentic self, that you're putting on a shelf for them, they're never going to fully allow themselves to trust you because they don't know who they're trusting. So the number one thing is always be yourself. Say the things you would say them in the way that you would say them, and always follow through with whatever you say you're going to do. The other piece of that is active listening. So when people now, they trust that you are who you are, now they want to trust that you are in it for them, and you're going to validate that through active listening. So we do a lot of scripting. And the reason that we use scripting is not because scripting is magic words. It's because scripting allows you to know what you're going to say next. And if you know what you're going to say next when somebody's talking, you're not at that time trying to plan out your next words. All you're doing is listening to what they say, And you learn a lot from people when you listen to what they say. And when you're able to give them that information back in a positive way and validate to them that you've been listening to them, that's really the second way that you're going to build that trust. And then the third thing about trust is really always following through with what you say you're going to follow through with. And a lot of times, as agents, we might get asked questions, or we may be put in situations that are new to us. There's something new every day. And so you might tell a client that, hey, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to get back to you. If you don't follow through with that getting back to them, then the next time you say that to them, it was just a way for you to blow them off. But if you make sure that you follow up with them and say, hey, look, here was our question. Here was what we thought the answer was. Here's the actual answer. Then it really solidifies that trust. So to me, it's being authentic, actively listening to everything that they talk about, and then following through with what you need to follow through with.
Great advice. And most people in their lives don't have anybody to listen to them because people are waiting for the next thing to say. And if you can honor that person by being attentive, that's huge. And also, one of the things you mentioned was, if you say you're going to get back to someone tomorrow, even if you don't have the answer, getting back tomorrow and saying, hey, Scott, still working on that. It's going to take another 4 hours for me to get back to you. Just doing that just strengthens that the ties that bind that trust. It's when you say, I don't want to call him right now. I'll call him in 4 hours when I have the answer. You builds a weaker trust foundation. So
yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about, without naming names, one of your charges where you saw something in them and they couldn't quite see in themselves yet, and how you got them to see how amazing they were and kind of get up to that level that you knew they were capable of. Like, how do you guide people there? Because sometimes, it's our biggest enemy is ourselves. It's all about mindset, and they rely on your trust in them to have trust in themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got a couple of agents who they're brand new in the business. I mean, they've been in the business maybe a year, and it is very difficult when you're brand new in this business, especially when you're around people who are closing business regularly and you're not, to feel like, okay, this is something I can do. You got to understand that somewhere between 80 and 90% of realtors don't make it. So it is a very small percentage of the realtors that make it. And even out of that 10, 20% of realtors that do make it, most of them close 3 or 4 deals a year. So to be somebody who can get to a place where, you're closing 20, 30, 40 deals a year, it's a very small group of people. And the way that you get somebody from I don't know what I'm doing to I'm going to be closing multiple deals a month is by constant positive reinforcement. It is very easy to go negative in this business and talk about what people are not capable of doing. What I find is that when you really focus on what people are good at and you keep reinforcing what they're good at and what their strengths are, then those weaknesses don't matter as much. And I don't mind using her name. I mean, Natalie, Cassandra, these are young women who have put a ton of effort into their real estate career. They are growing every single day. They're getting better every single day. And it's less me and more them. But it really just comes from the fact that they know they can pick up that phone at any time of the day or night with any problem. And they call me and I'm going to answer, right? They know that I'm there for them. Which means that they're able to put themselves in more uncomfortable situations because they know that if they get to a place where they don't know what they're doing, that we're going to work through it. And that it's interesting that it's very easy to drop a ball in real estate. But the great thing about real estate is it doesn't matter if you drop the ball. It's very easy to pick it back up. And most people are afraid, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a mistake. We're all going to make mistakes. Mistakes happen. The problem isn't in making the mistake. The solution is in, okay, how do we fix it? And it's always fixable. So I really think that the way you get people to grow is getting them to understand that there's nothing they can do in this process that's really going to hurt them that bad. And that once they get to a place where they don't know what to do, they've got somebody that has their back that'll help them get through it. And once we get through that, then the next time it comes up, you're going to already understand what to do and it's going to get easier.
You were talking about positive reinforcement. I was in Cuba and went to hang out with some dolphins, and I got to swim with Tony the dolphin. So I'm a curious fellow. So I went to the trainer and said, how does your understanding of training dolphins relate to your kids? He says, I use the exact same thing. It's all about positive reinforcement. When I throw a fish, my kids jump. Okay, he didn't say the last part, but so Scott, what's something, you've been in this business for a while. What's something now that you wish you knew earlier on? Something that a new agent could kind of go, I'm so glad I listened to Scott. This has helped me.
Yeah, I think the most important thing in this business is prospecting. It's the one thing that everybody wants to avoid. Everybody wants to, I'm going to get leads from social media. I'm going to get leads from my sphere. I'm going to get leads from these magical places that are going to provide leads. And what I can tell you is that if you don't pick this thing up and use it 100 times a day in some form or fashion regarding real estate, then you're not going to be successful. And if you look at the agents who, as somebody who's been at the top of a brokerage for a while, I can tell you that a lot of agents look at me and say, oh my gosh, Scott never prospects. Well, what they don't realize is that all those times when they were at home or when they were asleep or when they weren't at the office, I was. I start work at 7 a.m. I usually finish work at 7 p.m. Most agents don't come in the office, so they might see a window of time of me doing something 2 or 3 hours and think that that's what my day looks like. My day revolves around prospecting, and I can tell you that I don't care what sales position, or if you are in a position in which you need to generate new business on a monthly basis, you have got to dig into prospecting, and you've got to get yourself to 100 clients, because once you've prospected enough that you've closed 100 clients, your business can then start to feed itself, because now you have 100 people who you've helped that can refer you business or talk about you out there in the world. So I really think that those are the two keys, are prospecting and getting your first 100 clients closed.
And I'll add the third one that you already said, which I think was just like a huge thing, which was like, you are going to drop the ball, but it's not the end of the world. Everybody does it. You've got people backing you up. They're going to help you figure it out. And I think that's also the other thing. People are afraid of making a mistake or needing to be perfect. And there is no such thing as perfect. I'm a firm believer in, if I can instill in people to have the gene that says, I want to be better. And that way you analyze what went well and what went badly. And you're always looking for, what's the lesson to be learned? How can I tweak my performance just a little bit and just go on that path? That's how you become Scott Smith, apparently.
Well, you said some really smart things, Coach Umar. One of the things is, you don't have to get 100% better every day. You have to get 1% better on a daily basis. If you get 1% better every single day, in 100 days, you're 100% better than you were. In a year, you're 300% better than you were. So I really think it's incremental changes, but it really comes from discipline and consistency. Like, if you time block a day that you know makes you successful. I start work at this time. I prospect from here to here. I never trade my prospecting time for anything. I show during these times. I'm doing, paperwork stuff at these times. And if you know that time block day works, then you just rinse and repeat that day over and over and over again. And the discipline and the consistency will get you where you want to go.
Absolutely. I think it's when it becomes a habit, then it's just an effortless thing to do. You don't even realize you're doing it. So, Scott, you mentioned that you came back from a mastermind group. Tell us about the group. What kind of other people hang out there? Are they all realtors, or are they in different professions?
No, they are a bunch of different professions. It's the $1 Billion Boardroom. Javier Hinojo, he is one of my favorite people. It is a real estate mastermind. I love being in that room. I'm the dumbest person in that room. I am the least experienced person in that room. I grow every time I meet them. They do a lot of like multifamily and commercial investing, and all of them have different avenues in which they've gotten to very similar places. And I just love being around people who remind me that there are 1,000 ways to make money in real estate, and you don't have to pigeonhole yourself in one. And so I would encourage everybody and anybody who wants to be successful in anything, find another group of smart people, make sure you are at the bottom of that room, because over time you will get to the top of that room. And when you get to the top of that room, go find another room that you're at the bottom of, because you need to constantly surround yourself with people who are doing better than you, because that's the only way you're going to grow yourself.
One of the things I find that's kind of interesting is this: people that are truly leaders and champions and very successful tend to be people that want to show you their playbook. If you ask, how did you do this? They're like, oh, Scott, let me show you how I did this. This is how you do it. And people that are selfish generally reach a certain level of performance. Like, certainly you could have some outliers that become highly successful. But have you found that to be true, that people that are truly successful are magnanimous and generous?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I got into wholesaling about 6 months ago, and I did it because I was at the $1 Billion Boardroom, talked to this amazing guy, New South Properties, Jacob Mullins, a fantastic guy. And he started telling me what he was doing. And he said, oh my gosh, I'll show you what I do. He showed me what he did. I was able to go out and copy his program and close some probably 6 or 7 wholesale deals over the last 6 or 7 months. And, I did some stuff to compensate him, because I felt like, if you're going to teach me something, then I owe you something, and I'm good with that. But he never really asked for anything. He just did it to be able to help, to help grow somebody. And I'm not competing in his market, so there was no downside to him. So yeah, I feel like it's the best thing in the world is when you're around people who already have done it and they're willing to show you how to do it. I actually just got back from a conference in Pennsylvania. Kevin and Tia, the Dream Life 100, amazing group. They're showing us how to buy and sell mobile home parks. And again, they're just two people who found a way to do something, and they do it really well, and they're willing to teach some people how to do it because they want to raise the people around them. So there are lots of smart people out there who do things you could never even think of. And like you said, most of them are 100% willing to teach you what they're doing. And it may take a little time. It may take a little money, right? Like you got to invest in yourself. But I will tell you that you will change your life by copying what somebody else does.
Absolutely. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. I learned a lot, and I've been, there's a B key on this, actually the letter B on my keyboard that marks different parts of the podcast. So my B key is actually getting rubbed out because I pressed it so many times on a conversation today. I'm going to do the outro, and then let's stay online so we can chat afterwards.
Yeah.
Any last words or anything you want to share with our audience or how to get a hold of you?
Sure. So first of all, I want to say thank you to you, Coach Umar. I appreciate you letting me come on your podcast. An amazing opportunity. You can reach me very easily. My cell number is the best way to reach me. It's 720-252-7037. Or you can reach me at scott@youfirst.com. YOU, the number 1, S like Sam, T like Tom.com. So I'm always reachable, and I'm one of the few people in the world who almost always answers their phone.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for being on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.